next we have Jeel, who's going to talk about his grandmother. Jeel, your grandmother.
Namaste everyone. I want to ask you a question. What is the highest form of love that one can experience and also give? One that is the most difficult to give and experience at the same time. It is motherly love. Motherly love is the highest form of love that we have all received in our lives, be it from our mothers or our grandmothers. And one day, we're going to be fortunate enough to give it back as well. Why motherly love? A mother and a child have a special bond. From the moment the child is in the mother's womb, the mother and the child are close together. The mother carries the child for 9 months, nourishes from the inside. From the moment the child is born, it is a relationship of distance. First, the child is at home, and then starts going to nursery and is away for a couple of hours a day. And then goes to school and is away for even longer. And then goes to university and will eventually leave home. The relationship between a mother and a child is one of distance and is a relationship between two that are not equal. Because it is a child that needs and receives everything, it's a mother that gives unconditionally. And my grandmother symbolized this motherly love. I want to take you to a journey. Imagine you're in the country of Yemen. Yemen is just below Saudi Arabia in modern age. Within that country, you're in a port town where huge ships would come across, and you're living in a town called Eden. When my grandmother was married at a young age, she had 6 beautiful children, and she would be living in this port town, while my grandfather was a merchant trader, be traveling days on end on ships, selling textiles and then coming back, and then selling and coming back. And she would manage all the household, she would do all the duties, she would nourish and help the children. All the 6 children grew up to be beautiful and well educated around her. And she never complained. In this port town one day, because it was a British colony, a civil war broke out. We're in the late 1960s and early 70s now. The British and the Arabs started fighting. And all the Indians that were overseas there had to leave pretty much overnight for their safety to return back home. In this instance, it was my grandmother who, through the hardship, had 6 children with her. They got on a ship on a long journey to India. Back in those days, not everybody was fortunate enough to travel on a plane. And eventually, after a long journey, she would end up in Mumbai, where the rest of our family lived. My grandfather soon followed after. But it was through the whole episode of the 60s and 70s, where she was nourishing her children, she had dealt with the hardship, she had to look after the entire household, that she was able to give that motherly love to her children. She was able to give that motherly love to her neighbors and her surroundings and lifted everyone together. I want to fast forward a couple of years. So, fast forward to a couple of years ago, when I first started working. So I graduated from university, I found a job, and we were living all together in a joint family, so my grandmother would live with us. Think, how many of us have lived at some point with our grandparents, by show of hands? There's a few of us, so it's quite a lot in the audience. And it's a beautiful thing to live with your grandmother. It's a very beautiful thing, because a vivid memory I have, when I first started working, I always rush in the mornings, because you're always you're getting up, you're stressed, you need to pack your bag for work, put on your suit, put on your tie, and then, oh my God, I don't have time for breakfast, what do I do? And then I'd be running out of the household and she would be there. She would be there. And she'd be holding a banana because she knows I don't have enough time to eat anything else. And so she'll say, Jeel, do you want the banana? She'll be sitting on the sofa. Do you want the banana? How do you take it with you? And I'll quickly grab the banana, put my bag on and run out the door and run for the bus. And then I noticed, days after days, weeks after weeks, there were these little episodes where whether I'm in a rush and she'd offer me something, when I come home after a long day at work and she'd offer to warm up the food. And these are very simple and common things that I'm speaking about, but it's these little simple things that add up to the wider picture of motherly love. Not just the kind of love that you can give to your children, but to your grandchildren and their friends as well. A last story I want to mention, in her later days, we were talking about organ donation, in fact. So I had just, myself and my brother, we'd just come from a camp where we learned something about organ donation and how it's something that in our society we need to promote amongst the elders. And we had this discussion with my grandma. So I spoke to her. We were just speaking about organ donation and we were educating her on why we should do it, and she was just patiently listening. And little did we know, she had already signed up before we had. And then she would tell us that, what is the point of having your body once you've passed away? Why not donate your parts to somebody else, where it can be useful to them, and you are no longer around? So the same points that we were trying to convince her of, she would go into much depth and she would teach us about it. So she was forward-thinking in that aspect as well. And that is another example of unconditional motherly love. Not just towards your own children or your extended family, but towards people that you don't know. Because one of the most personal things to us that we have is our own body. And then being that forward about it, saying that I'm willing to give it up for somebody else, that is truly unconditional. And with that, if you go back, the bond that I described between a mother and a child is indeed very special. However, we're all capable of not only receiving that motherly love, but giving it. Not just giving it to our immediate family, but also to our friends, and most importantly, to the wider Samaj.